a lot of the kids these days as well is they don't know how to jump. They don't know how to land. They don't know how to change direction effectively. They don't know how to accelerate, decelerate. We focus purely on developing a student as a whole. We're not just building swimmers. We are building people. Coaches still should incorporate a multi-sport understanding for kids. You need to expose them to as many different sporting disciplines as possible. You learn different movements. You learn how to deal with people. My opinion is if you're not focusing on developing that, you got into coaching for the wrong reasons.
So today we have Jean Pierre Fagan with us. I have worked with you in the past when we did the SDA, the Sports Development Academy. And you inspired me back then as well.
Thank you,
JP. I really love the work that you do. You work with athletes, you work with children.
Yes.
I mean, among others as well. You work with everybody, but you focus on children and athletes.
Absolutely. So my background is strength and conditioning with the idea of helping athletes, right? That was sort of what I wanted to go into. You know, you go to university, the first thing that you think about is, I want to train pro athletes, you know, you want to be a part of the major teams and the sport clubs and things like that. But along the way, you find different passions. So at university, I was very fortunate enough to work with university athletes. Sport ranged from javelin, para-javelin, so working with a Paralympic champion, which was very humbling. Then rugby was the main focus, being South Africa. That's obviously what we're going to focus on. A bit of swimming, bit of hockey, bit of rugby sevens, as well as, what else, basketball. So just a wide variety of sport.
I had to ask this question. No cricket, because I'm from India, so cricket is...
So the gentleman who did cricket was obviously, that was his team, and that's pretty much what he focused on, because he loved cricket.
Okay.
Again, I come from a rugby background. I wanted to stick to that rugby sevens side.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentor was the head of strength and conditioning for the rugby's team.
Right.
So he pretty much taught me everything I know. And still to this day, he takes me to school. Then left university, and so I grew up here in Dubai. Went back to South Africa for university, then decided to come back.
Hold on. Grew up in Dubai.
Yes.
Which school did you go to?
Dubai American Academy.
Oh, okay.
So, expat brat.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, folks and I came over here probably 2008. So, we've been here a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Did pretty much the entire high school here. Dubai American Academy, played rugby for the Exiles at the time, and then decided to go back to university in South Africa. Then university was over. I was sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You know, follow the career path of the strength and conditioning within the university setting, or come out here and try and make a name for myself out here. And the difficult part is, as we know, is the sport within the UAE is still very much developing. We still got a long way to go. So I decided to take the hard road. I like to think of it as that. And when I got out here, I very quickly realized that strength and conditioning actually never existed, or very vaguely existed. It's all about the private sector around here, right? It technically stems off to personal training. And in the beginning, I really struggled with that, because here I am coming from university athletes who all are on the road to professional sport. Coming to Dubai, you're helping individuals obviously become better humans, but through weight loss, a little bit stronger, and very, very few athletes. Then I was fortunate enough to work for the physical training company. They helped me get into the youth development scene, and the passion sparked. You can do a lot with a university-based athlete, but you can do even more with a child or a teenager going into the university. You know, you're actually looking at the individual as a whole more than anything else. These kids are trying to find themselves as well as trying to perform at high levels of sport. So it was interesting to see, how we can help these kids. And from there, the passion just grew and grew and grew. And that's when I met Caroline from Speedo and, asked if I could be part of the team. So I try to combine my passion with full-time work as S&C and youth development. And it's sort of like the rest is history. We focused purely on developing a student as a whole. We're not just building swimmers. We are building people. So that's where I feel like a lot of coaches really need to start taking a stance. If you're part of these big major teams, these professional sides, everyone will know about your name and hear who you are, and fantastic. But most of the work, in my opinion, is already done. They've gone through the development phase. Now you're just making sure that you're prolonging their careers. With the kids, we've started from the beginning. We're teaching them fundamentals. We giving them the long-term athletic development program. So we got to get them through this program to make sure that they move well, they eating well, hopefully. They start to develop a love and passion for not only the sport, but for becoming better at sport. Okay, so that's the physical side. What about the mental side? Most of these kids are having identity crisis. It's normal. We've all gone through it. You hit certain ages where you're like, who am I? What am I meant to be doing in this world? Who are my friends? Why are these people my friends? Now we got to try help them through these phases. As coaches, we're in a very, very fortunate position to be able to mentor these kids and hopefully teach them what's right, what's wrong, and to challenge themselves into becoming better humans.
So do you think you're in the right direction, JP?
Sometimes, right? So I think at the end of the day, it boils down to your personal why. What is your why in life? Are you doing things that are going to hurt your why? Or are you doing things to hopefully make sure that that why is going to come forth and people see what your why is? So that's pretty much where I think I'm standing at the moment. I like to think I'm still young.
You are.
So there's still a lot of learning to go on. And hopefully I can help those along the way as well.
How is an athlete's program different from a regular program?
So we got to go with the mindset of the children have a 0 years of training age. We got to start with the fundamentals. Do they know how to do fundamental movement patterns? 90% of the time it's no. And the basic movement patterns, we need to start to teach them squat, hinge, so a deadlift-based movement, push, pull. If they cannot do any of those movements, then obviously further down the line, there could be risk for injury. If they can do these movements, then we progress them, right? So we base all of our movements on these 4 sort of movement patterns. Once you've got these 4 movement patterns, you integrate them in different sort of circumstances. The younger the athlete is, or the child, you need to approach their training completely different to a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid. Kids love games. They want to have fun. So how do we incorporate these movement patterns whilst having fun? And it's all about games. You incorporate animal-based movements. Animal-based movements, funny enough, I get someone to do what we call a duck walk, for example. They go into a squat without even realizing it. You play an evasive kind of game while in a duck walk. They're getting comfortable being in that squat position. It's helping their mobility. They're having fun while doing it. So being able to teach it becomes easier long term. It's all about what we call neuroplasticity, right? So your brain's ability to take in new information and remember that information. The minute you add fun into any sort of environment, the ability to remember becomes way better. So I don't want to get the science wrong. There was a if I'm not mistaken, if it was a psychologist, she said, anyways, throughout one of her research papers, she was saying that it takes probably 200 to 300 repetitions for someone to learn a new behavior, whether it's writing something down, whether it's a squat. But the minute fun was involved, it decreased it to 20 reps. So that gives us a little bit of insight. Okay, if you want kids to learn something really well, quite quickly, let's have some fun with it. So now, based on the fun, we incorporate these movements somehow. And you can do it in many different ways, and most of the time it is either team sport or game-based. From there, we start to develop, and we start to get a little bit more serious in a weight room-based environment. You still got to go through those movement patterns, the push, the pull, the hinge, the squat. Now we start to load these patterns. So you can get a weight involved, you can get medicine bags, balls, whatever it may be, get all these things involved, and then start to move within those patterns. That's what we need to focus on. And we need to focus on developing these things. A lot of the kids these days as well is they don't know how to jump. They don't know how to land. They don't know how to change direction effectively. They don't know how to accelerate, decelerate. So again, within a game setting, you can incorporate all of these, which is fantastic. As we progress with age, the seriousness of the training plan would change. Then it becomes, if you're going up on sort of like the hierarchy of long-term athletic development, they get to a phase where they need to train to train. That's sort of like the headline. Train to train, meaning you're training to become better. Only after the age of, say, 16, we start looking at high performance-based sport, where you start to focus solely on the sport that you wish to do as a profession. Coaches still should incorporate a multi-sport understanding for kids. You need to expose them to as many different sporting disciplines as possible. You learn different movements. You learn how to deal with people. So if a child, for example, is a swimmer, that is an individualized sport. Meaning they pretty much got to do what they need to do, and they extremely responsible for themselves and their performance, no matter what happens. If you look at cricket, rugby, football, the blame can be placed along anyone. It's more of a collective. But their communication skills are probably a little bit better because they're able to communicate with one another to all achieve the same goal. So why not have them learn from each other? There's something very special about the mental toughness of a swimmer or any individualized sport, track and field, because you're on your own. It's only you out there. And then there's something beautiful about, say, the camaraderie or the social belonging to a team sport, like football, cricket, whatever it may be. So we need to be able to teach both teams the same thing or each other, right? So developing through the stages, the minute kids start getting into sport, expose them to everything. Expose them to team-based sports. Expose them to a cardiovascular-based sport. Expose them to a strength-based sport, whether it's gymnastics, weightlifting. Those sports coupled together could create a beautiful recipe for an athlete to become almost indestructible. You also, if you want to start looking at the mental side of things, if you have exposed a child to one sport throughout their entire life, the risk of burnout is extremely high. Now, we can't say that burnout is only physical, because it's not. Burnout is more a mental state. You know, they start to develop a hatred for the sport. They feel extremely lethargic. They aren't recovering well. They're not sleeping well. And the list can go on. So if you start to incorporate a multi-discipline environment or get the child involved with as many different sports as possible, that risk of overtraining comes down, funny enough. You know, because people think, exposing them to all these different sports, they're going to burn out, they're going to be too tired. Chances are they won't be, because they're having fun in different areas. But yes, of course, you can go to the extreme and be like, okay, so little Johnny is going to be involved in swimming for 2 hours today. After swimming, he's got football. After football, right. So that's obviously just going to the complete opposite side of the continuum. Have them in different seasons of school, right? School, you go through seasons. First season could be football. Second season could be swimming, athletics, whatever it may be. Have them go through each one. They can, of course, join an academy and do a sport that they really very much prefer. But get yourself involved wherever you can. This is exposing the child to multi-planar movements, developing a robust athlete. Our jobs as youth development coaches is not trying to develop youth Olympians. It's trying to develop athletes that are going to enjoy their sport for the rest of their lives. My opinion is, if you're not focusing on developing that, you got into coaching for the wrong reasons. It's more about the well-being of the person in front of you rather than the outcome where it gets your name on the plaque or, you know, getting the shout out at Olympics or whatever it may be. It's about that kid going, or when that kid turns 20, 30, whatever it may be, looking back and be like, it's because of that coach that I'm still here. It's because of that coach that I decided to pursue this career and maintain it and hopefully somewhat injury-free. That's what we need to be looking at. So, I mean, to get back to your initial question is, how would the training vary? The training varies on the way we load and the way we expose the children to these multiplanar movements. It starts only getting extremely specific at university and professional-based levels. There's no such thing as sports-specific training, especially in youth development. The only way it becomes sports-specific is your practice that you go to with that coach. In the weight room or in the gym or whatever you want to call it, it's about making sure that we've decreased the risk for injury. You can never completely avoid injury. It's not possible. But you can reduce the risk for it. So we focus on that. We focus on developing aspects of that sport. Rugby player, for example, depending on the position, they need to be extremely powerful. They need to be aerobically fit. They need to be able to change direction. They need to have extremely good hand-eye coordination. All things we can work on. But you can say that so does a tennis player. A tennis player needs to move really well. A tennis player is explosive. They need to be able to change direction extremely quickly, and their hand-eye coordination needs to be extremely good. So aspects of different programs will always work within each other. No problem. The only time it really starts to change is at the university-based level or the high-performance level. So what I do in the weight room, whether it's rugby, cricket, swimming, netball, whatever it may be, especially as youth, I'm working on extremely similar things. I need to be able to make sure that I'm building the Toyota of athletes, someone who's never going to break. Then when they go to their university-based setting and things like that, they've got such a beautiful foundation that now you can put your windows on your house. So you start looking a bit more specific. What kind of couch are you going to put in your room? So that's where you start looking. As long as I've built that foundation, made sure that these athletes are now the Toyotas, the Land Cruisers, they can now finally step into that high performance setting comfortably and be exposed to different types of stimulus. Once they've got that stimulus down, they can have fun with it at that level. That's what youth development is all about. Making sure that we are building robust athletes, whether it's mentally and physically, preparing them for the hardships of life, again, whether it's in the gym or not, and hopefully prolonging their athletic careers as they go on, even if they decide not to take a career in sport. Hopefully we've developed this passion for health and wellness. Now, obviously, that's sort of like the athletic side. Now, if we had to look at the health and wellness side, you can absolutely train the general population, the same as what you would train an athlete, if they've got that foundation. And again, most of the time they don't. That's why they come to you, because they need to, most of the time, lose weight. Most of the time, probably doctor's orders, you know. So that's where things start to change a little bit. That's where we need to develop a human, go through different ideas of a program, different loading patterns, helping prolong their life. And then from there, obviously, you can develop into a more athletic-based program. But most of the time, you want them just to be healthy, move well, move at all. Because most of the time, they just don't move at all, getting lazy.
Oh, I would say work comes in between.
Massively. The thing is, when it comes to work, obviously, a lot of people have their different reasons for going to work. Whether it's making money, whether it's providing for your family, and obviously the list can go on. But if you're looking at your health and wellness, if you're not 100%, how are you going to be 100% at work? How are you going to be 100% for your family? Why do you think that when you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, why do you think they ask you to put it on yourself first?
Because only when you can help yourself, you can help others.
Same idea, right? So by helping yourself be a fitter, healthier person, whether it's going to the gym, playing sport, whatever it may be, it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It just means interacting in a sport-based setting with friends. You are probably going to live a little bit longer than most other people. You become a better person. You're healthier. If you're healthier, you are setting a great example for your kids. The harsh reality is monkey see, monkey do, right? Social learning theory. It's been proven time and time again. I think the psychologist's name is Albert Bandura. He came out with a study about social learning theory. Now, they wanted to see how kids would imitate adult behavior. And time again, they noticed that they do every single time. Doesn't matter what kind of behavior it is, they imitate it. If you're setting a bad example, sitting on the couch, watching TV for however many hours a day, on your phone, not exposing yourself to any sort of health and wellness, eating terribly, the child will be like, that's normal. Why can't I do that? And then most coaches have that struggle of we need to actually teach not only the kids, but now the parents as well. Saying, okay, well, what you're doing right now is not actually helping little Johnny over here, because your example is literally teaching him what he should not be doing. But because he's exposed to that environment day in, day out, That's all he knows, or all she knows. Now, when they come to the idea of, okay, little Johnny needs to go and play football or go play any sport, but he's not improving. Well, okay, is he doing the skills that we've asked him to do, to work on at home? Probably not, because he sees mom or dad sitting at home doing nothing. So why should I do it? Why should I go work on my skills? If mom and dad are eating KFC, McDonald's, whatever it may be, why should I eat my veggies with high quality protein and some carbohydrates? I just eat the same as them. And then again, it's still a chain reaction. You're still not going to get better. You're not going to be a well-oiled machine. What you put in is what you're going to get out. This is something we need to avoid. It's extremely difficult, right?
I share the same opinion with you that a child, especially in the early years, grassroots level,
yes,
they need to play as many sports as possible.
Yeah.
Get them, get many skills,
Yeah.
learn many skills, because even if it's not pertaining to a sport, you should be able to pick yourself up and stand up.
100%.
The agility,
Yeah.
if you slip and fall, the ability to catch something,
Yeah.
or throw something.
100%.
Very, very essential. So all these happens when you play multiple sports.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the diet, and it's not just training the child and asking whether they do take that information they learned from the coaching and the training, and do they practice it at home.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that the parents be like, that's why we're sending them to you, for you to get it done. But you can't expect wonders if you send the child once a week, twice a week, or even thrice a week, and not do anything when they go back home.
Correct. Right. So, for example, in the swim academy that I'm working with at the moment, we've got our lead squad do between 8 and 9 sessions a week. Okay. Now, a lot of parents may have that mentality of exactly what you just said. Well, they're swimming and training 9 times a week. Why aren't they getting better? Or why aren't they getting better quicker? Why are they overweight? And again, it's like we are being told that we are doing it wrong. Okay, even though they're spending, give or take, 10 to 12 hours with us throughout the week, a couple of hours at school, their direct influence is still you as a parent. It has been since they were born, since the day that they'll move out of the house.
Probably even after.
100%. Right? You become the first line of communication. You have been. From the time they were born. They know who you are more than anyone else. Right? Now, even though coaches have a great amount of influence, they are still going to conform to what they see more. My kids don't see what I eat. Or the kids that I coach, don't see what I eat. I can tell them what to eat. But again, it's more that visual aspect. Okay, but hang on. Mom over there is eating something else, or dad over there is eating something else. Why should they cook something different for me? Or, why should we be eating differently? Again, you don't have to be eating differently, just all eat the same thing, but something healthy. And we struggle with that every day. Still to this day, the most asked presentation for me to do by parents every year, every season, is nutrition. And the thing is, it doesn't matter how much information I put on a PowerPoint presentation and send it to you and give the speech and things like that. It's not going to change until you do. It's not going to change until you, as a parent, has made the decision to buy different groceries. I've made it really simple as well. You go to the fruit and veg section, get all your stuff. You go to the meat section, get your stuff. Get some spices, have fun. It's literally that easy. It doesn't have to be boring. Also, that's where a a lot of parents start to think, oh, but eating healthy is extremely boring. It doesn't have to be. There's thousands and thousands of, whether it's Instagram posts, influencers, whatever it may be, who are helping people come up with new ideas of high quality meals with a little bit lower calories. But you as a parent need to make that decision. If you really want your child to excel in life, forget sport, life, become healthier, live longer, move better, you need to make the decision to be the better influence. No one else is going to do it for you. And I think the harsh reality is, in Dubai, we struggle with that the most. We live in this first world country where we are very spoiled. And you can see it everywhere. No place is like Dubai, and everyone will say that. But I think it's also a little bit of, it's creating this environment where we notice that things can be done for us. And that's seems to be a rolling conversation I have with my athletes every year, is they could be extremely upset after they got really bad results from their sporting, whether it's at a competition or even in training. They're trying to do something in particular and it was terrible. But what we need to help them understand is that, well, is your result a reflection of the work that you've put in? Most of the time it is. Most of the time you haven't put the work in because you feel like you've paid your coaches and they're just going to do it for you. It doesn't work that way. We can give the best programs, or we can ask the best athletes in the world for their programs. Usain Bolt, please send us your sprinting program. Michael Phelps, please send us your running program. Swimming program. If you give it to anyone that doesn't have that same mindset, you're not going to get anywhere because you haven't put that kind of work in. So I think that's sort of like the recipe of disaster. I feel like we working with and we're struggling with. It's probably the biggest thing for me as a coach, as a youth development coach, that I struggle with season after season after season, is helping kids understand that, number one, being an athlete isn't just coming and going and coming and going. It's everything else. What you're doing at home is going to impact what you're doing in your sport. And that branches off to your nutrition, to your rehab work, to your sleep, to your hydration. And then the list goes on and on. So the things that you're doing there, is that creating a perfect little step ladder for you to achieve here? Probably not. Most of the time it's not. Then the results that you're getting here, are those the results? Or is it a reflection of what you've done? And it's a yes every time. The only time you can say that it's no is if the kid has decided not to do some self-reflection and decides to blame external factors. Coaches get blamed. They're the first people to get blamed. We know that. We're the first people to get blamed whether it comes to injury, when it comes to times not being good enough, whether it comes to...
When you say times not being good enough, you mean the record time?
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Personal times. We as coaches will get blamed for that. Because again, that mentality that we've got in this environment is that I've given you some money, you should have made my kid better. What parents don't realize is that they are the ultimate high performance managers for children. You should be taking control of your child's life. 100%. You need to be able to say, okay, this is what we're eating. You're buying the groceries, right? or you're placing the delivery for them to come and deliver their groceries, whatever it may be. But you're still choosing what goes on that grocery list. You're still choosing what time your child should be going to bed, how much screen time that the child is exposed to. What are they doing between the time of finishing school and going to bed? You're the one deciding all of that. Children, obviously, as they get older, they start to make their own choices, and fantastic. But if they haven't been taught from a young age how to make these decisions, how are they going to progress? So as the ultimate high-performance manager, you need to be able to set the example. And the only way for you to be setting that example is for you to adopt a healthy lifestyle yourself and to be able to say, this is what I want for my kid. How am I going to influence them? And that is through what I see, what my child is seeing me do. So you need to make sure that visual part of the parenting job is sound. It's got to be fantastic. Obviously, you're going to make mistakes. And the kids will know that. And you got to learn from your mistakes. And you got to teach them how to learn from theirs. But if you're in the right direction of being the high-performance manager that you want your child, or that you want to be, so that your child can develop in a beautiful manner, then set that good example.
JP, how about getting advice from quote-unquote, outside experts like parents? They're giving you advice on how it should be done.
So teachers and coaches are the only two professions in the world where other people tell them how to do their jobs. And I'm always willing to listen, right? No one knows your child better than you do, I hope, right? You can tell me about how your child is as a person, but you can't tell me that what I'm doing to help your child is not good. Case in point, weightlifting stunts your growth, apparently, right? Now, I can give you almost hundreds of research papers to tell you otherwise. Hundreds. Because as a youth development coach, that's going to be the biggest question you're going to get and probably the biggest pushback. I still have pushback today. And doesn't matter how many research papers I send through, I still get pushback. Now, the idea of, if we look at it, get a little bit of history first, right? The idea of heavy weightlifting stunting a child's growth actually comes from, I think it's the 1800s, where there was obviously still a little bit of child labor and things like that working within, whether it's a mine, whether it's railroads and things like that. What they started to realize is that there was a pattern of kids staying a little bit on the shorter side. So that they thought, okay, well, there's a correlation. And the thing is, correlation isn't always causation. Two very different things. Now, what actually happens is that when these kids are carrying heavy bags, heavy loads and things like that in and out of mines or at the railroads and things like that, the posture that they go into changes. So their growth actually hasn't stunted. What has changed is their posture. If I've got a heavy load, if I'm carrying something heavy in front of me as a young child and I'm not doing it in a correct form, I'm going to round and I'm going to round. So what I'm going to do is going to pull my entire posture forward, which means it's going to make me shorter. Simple. So that's sort of like the brief history of all of that. Now, getting back to being told by parents what we should be doing. At the end of the day, if the parent is an accountant, I'm not going to come to you and tell you how to run your company's books. At the end of the day, I don't know. I didn't study it. I maybe know how to run my own finances, but just because I know how to save a little bit of money, spend a little bit of money, and maybe invest a little bit of money, doesn't mean that I'm an accountant or I'm an investor. No. It means that I might have an idea of to keep my own nest egg at a good stable base. So I'm not going to tell you how to do your job. Same with whatever profession. I'm not going to go to a mechanic and say, that's the problem there. How do I know what that problem is? Am I an engineer? No. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I went and did this. Quite funny we talking about that. Saw on a doctor's mug the other day, it says, please do not mistake your Google research for my degree. Right? We've got information accessible to us at the touch of a finger, right? But how we process that information and how we use that information, or knowing even how to read that information, changes. A engineer is not going to know how to read a biomechanics-based paper. They might understand some of the physics part of it, but they're not going to understand why we do what we do, and vice versa. Right? Like I said, I'm always open to having conversation with parents. Always. Tell me what little Johnny is doing at home. How is he interacting? What is he eating? What can we do to help? By telling me that your son or your daughter cannot partake in physical activity where there are weights involved because it's going to stunt their growth, I will disagree with you. At the end of the day, I can't force your child to lift that weight. You still have to give me the okay. But just know that chances are your child may fall behind on their physical development as we go through. They might be more prone to injuries as they get older. They might be lacking some sort of power. They might be lacking some sort of speed. I won't say 100% they're going to fall behind, because they might not. But there is a big chance that they'll fall behind from the physical development part. So why not let us do what we do? You've obviously, like most parents like to say, is we're paying you money, do your job kind of thing. Let me do my job. I'm not going to sit in the back of the car and tell someone else how to drive. You're in the back seat for a reason. You're a passenger. Enjoy the ride. That's the way I look at it. But we'll always get pushback.
100%. So that is parents giving us advice as coaches and trainers and teachers as well.
Absolutely.
Your thoughts on parents? Some of the parents, they decide what their children should do as sport, especially when they're younger. I mean, when they're older, I understand to a certain degree, yes, they would know their child is good in something and they would want to encourage that.
Yeah.
But at a very young stage, I mean, if the child is enjoying it, there's no problem. But sometimes it's the parent that wants the child to perform better.
Correct.
And then also give advice to the coach on how to get things done, because A, they're paying us.
Yeah.
And B, they want the child to improve or become a sports person that they can't be, or they were once upon a time.
Yeah.
So your thoughts on that?
Again, we got to try look at that multidisciplinary sport model. A lot of the time, parents try live through their kids, in the sense that I was a fantastic cricket player, but I had to retire due to injury. So my son or my daughter is not going to go play cricket. And that's all they're going to do. You're not doing that child any favors. They might actually have a great big passion for cricket, and they might enjoy it, and they might go into that professional route. That could happen. But again, then we start to look at burnout. And I've seen it with some of our athletes. I've asked them, okay, why did you start swimming? Because my parents told me I had to. Okay, but why? Do you enjoy it? Sometimes. So by the time they reach 16, that's what I've noticed in the past, 16, 17, they're gone. They no longer partake in any sport at all. So now the parents have ruined sport for their child, which means that the child is possibly going to end up being an unhealthy person for the rest of their lives because of your own internal conflict. That's not what a parent should be doing. Again, I can't really be like, I'm Mr. Know-it-all for parents. I've been a parent all of 5 minutes. But at the same time, I understand child development from a physical aspect and how the physical aspect is going to encourage or influence the mental aspect. And to me, that's a recipe of disaster if mom or dad is trying to live their life through their child and encourage one sport and one sport only and say, this is the sport that you have to do. Because the parent will be like, oh, Olympics. They just want their child to be an Olympian, or they want their child to be a world champion. Is that what the child wants? Maybe not. Again, it's encouraging them to partake in as many different activities as possible. Again, it doesn't have to be sport or a sport team. It can be general sport. Having fun with friends, going to the park, playing on the monkey bars, whatever it may be. But steering them in direction and say, this is the only direction, you're trying to create an identity for the child. What happens if something happens where that career has ended? The child is now faced with a massive identity crisis. Because all they've known is like, I identify as a swimmer. That's all I've known. Okay, but now take swimming away. What are you? Who are you? Can't answer that question. And then they've got their own internal conflict that they need to deal with. And it can be extremely difficult. Case in point, what we had to do at the university-based level, we have kids coming in and they are on scholarships. Within that first week, first month, they go see the university-appointed counselors. And the counselors most of the time will say, okay, what happens if you get injured during training camp this week and it ends your career and you no longer have a scholarship for the university? What are you going to do? They start having this internal conflict. They don't know what they're going to do. And now the university counselors need to try and help these kids find different identities or find their own identity within different codes or figure out who they are as a person rather than identifying or trying to join themselves to a sport, to a club, to any sort of other environment. We should be doing that at a much younger age.
And how can we do that, JP?
I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure that out, to be honest.
But when you say we, do you mean a collective of parents, coaches together with the child?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like I said, there's so much influence that we have as coaches. Kids will start looking up to you. If again you're an approachable person and you actually care about the child and you show that you care, they'll come to you for advice. And it's obviously not your job to tell them what to do, but it's part of your job to show them that you're also human and the decisions that they make is something that they're going to have to live with. Decisions that I've made in my past, I have to live with today because it's sort of like it shapes who you are along the road. Now, like you were saying, as a collective, parents, coaches, work together because we need to work together to be able to create the best well-being sort of model for your child or for any child. We need to make sure that if for whatever reason your child cannot identify as a piano player, as any sort of athlete, what are they going to do? How are they going to go about life in general? You know, freak accidents happen. If you are no longer able to ride a motorcycle because you've possibly injured your back, you paralyzed from the waist down. I know it's extreme case, but things happen. What are you supposed to do? How are you going to identify yourself? How are you going to figure out who you are if all you've known is that sport or that art? And that's something that I think, like we were saying, is that as a collective, we need to work together to try to figure out how we're going to help these kids. So you find that's why a lot of, say, ex-pro athletes, they go into commentary for that sport because they can't technically leave the sport. That's all they've known for their whole lives, which is fine. It's great. They've found something that they can possibly share their knowledge and help other people around them within that code, whether it's art, sport, whatever it may be, business. We need to be able to do that from a younger age, or coaches need to help and parents need to help from a younger age. I've spoken to many of my swimmers and they'll say to me straight up they have no clue what they're going to do if they didn't have swimming. And that I find sad. Okay, what about coaching swimming? What about doing video analysis for swimming? What about commentary for swimming? What about research for swimming, whether it's from a strength and conditioning aspect point of view or whether it's from the sport itself, whether it's, a physiological side of it, combining all of them together, trying to figure out how to create better swimmers, or going into programs to help the less fortunate learn how to swim. You're still embedded within, something that you've really enjoyed for your entire life, but you can't do it anymore for whatever reason. This is something that these are the conversations I feel like we need to have with our kids from a young age and help them develop it through.
So since you work with a lot of high performance athletes, can you tell me, how are they mentally? Can they take a loss?
Sometimes. Most of the time, no. And the reason why I say that is more athletes that I work with in first world countries cannot take a loss. Those from second and third world countries can take a loss. It's actually amazing. Here on the one side of the spectrum, I've got someone who's been exposed to the best science-based facilities, whether it's labs, gyms, coaches. You still get fantastic coaches. Yet they cannot, for the life of them, take a loss and move away from it or move on from it, learn from it. You've made a mistake. So what? We learn. Versus those who I've coached where they've had to work a lot harder, in the sense that they've worked harder because they didn't have a gym. So what I've done now is, okay, there's a wheelbarrow, there's some concrete, let's make our own weights. There's a bag there, I'm going to fill it with sand. Whatever it may be, we've made some monkey bars, or we found an old jungle gym or something like that, and we can work with that. I've found that they are able to take losses a lot better because they've never not known how to work for something. And again, this may be hypocritical, I guess, but personally I feel like they've worked for more aspects of that sport to understand the sport as a whole rather than just a couple of things, a couple of aspects of the sport. So from a mental side, I feel like those from less fortunate backgrounds are mentally stronger. And I can't say that it's a proven fact. This is just my own experience. I can't say, well, based on this research paper, based on that research, I can't say that. What I can say is from my experience working with those slightly less fortunate compared to this first world country where you can be given anything and everything, those who are less fortunate have been able to handle themselves at a high performance level a lot better.
Just mentally or even performance-wise?
Sometimes performance-wise as well. Okay. But again, that's where you start to look at other parts of the environment, you know, where they're exposed to multidiscipline sports. Most of the time it's yes. You know, do they suffer from burnout? Their stresses are obviously a lot more different from the stresses that some are facing in the first world country. But the individuals that have come from first world countries from a performance side, as in physical performance, most of the time they're a lot better. Just because of the fact that they've got the technology, they've got the coaching, they've got the environment to push that high performance level to its maximum. So this is where the argument of whether you're born with talent or you work for your talent can come into play as well. If I take someone who is extremely talented and put them in the less fortunate scenario, what's going to happen? If I take someone that's not so talented and put them in a high performance environment, what's going to happen? These are questions that I think we're still trying to answer. And again, if we flip them around, we put a super talented person within a massively high performance first world country based environment, and someone who less talented but needs to work a little bit harder based on their environment. Who's to say it's going to be better? Don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Again, just from what I've seen, I believe that there's something special about being exposed to a less fortunate environment and having to work through different stresses and different stimulus versus those who are in that first world country. There's something very special there. And from what I've seen, those who have come from the less fortunate, on a mental scale, they seem a lot more together, if I can put it that way. That's probably, again, like I said, I don't have any research to back that. That's personal observation.
This is an amazing conversation. I get to learn a lot again from you. And just like me, if there are any other parents or anyone who want to reach out to you, students, athletes, how do they get in touch with you?
Any form of social media, to be honest. I wouldn't say I'm a very active person on social media, but you can reach out to, so my Instagram handle is JP_performance coach. Send me a message. I'll always reply. Or email me. My email is jp.sccoach@gmail.com. Again, I'm always happy to have a conversation. So anyone who wants to reach out, talk about training, talk about child development, talk about both together, I'm more than happy to make some time for that.